to all my chefs out there. Um, we've been having so much fun together. I'm so excited that you're still with us and being a part of this unusual journey that we're taking online instead of being in person, which I much prefer, but I'm getting the hang of this. And I am enjoying all of the pictures and videos that you guys are sending. They're a lot of fun to watch and to share and see what you guys are creating on your own. So that's new and exciting. Now that we've gotten through all of the kind of basics with your cooking in the kitchen, we covered our food safety, kitchen safety basics. We covered our knife skills. So you guys are pretty good with all of your different cuts and how to hold a knife. Hopefully you've been practicing that. And you know now how to read a recipe, your mise en place, and measurements, all the different types of measurements, and a little bit on substitutions, because that's going to be a big deal as we try and use what we have instead of making extra unnecessary trips to the store. So hopefully you guys feel pretty confident in all that and keep practicing it. But this week I want to move on to something a little more philosophical that will help to connect us in a different way. So this week I want to talk to you about food memories. So something that really is unique to the human experience is how food connects us. So in every culture across the globe, people use food as a way to connect and carry on traditions and to show love for one another. And we all carry some of that in our own memories. So for me, one of my greatest food memories, and it brings me back every time I make it and I have it, is my grandmother's banana bread. So I make it in muffins. Any of you who have done any of my junior chef classes have likely made this. Anyone that's come to one of our community meals has probably tried them. It's an absolute joy for me to share them with others because I feel like it's a piece of my family history that I'm sharing. And a piece of love that my grandmother showed to me that I get to pass on to others. So it's very special, it's very meaningful, and food has this unbelievable ability to do that. Just the smell of it baking reminds me of my grandmother. So I want you to take a minute and think about your greatest food memory. Maybe it's something that your family has every year at a certain holiday, that the holiday just wouldn't be the same without it. Maybe it's something that someone you love makes for you when you don't feel well or when you're sad. Maybe it's a special recipe that just your grandparent makes, like my grandmother. She was a great cook. There were many things that she made, but the banana bread that I make in muffins, is definitely a favorite for me. So I want you to take some time and think about that. And then as an additional assignment this week, I want you to connect with maybe your grandparents or aunts and uncles or a neighbor, family friend that you know of that's older. And I want you to talk to them about their favorite food memory, and maybe if they can share with you a family traditional recipe, and then you make that at home. And I want you to share that with all of us. So we're going to have a collection of favorite family food memories and recipes, and we're going to have that up in our classroom. And I encourage all of you to try different family recipes. I think this is going to be a really fun adventure. If you can make a video of yourself preparing it as an instruction, like I've been doing, that would be really fun. You don't have to show yourself in the video. You can just show, your hands mixing and measuring. So if your parents are uncomfortable with you being in the video, that's a way that you can do it. And I would love to see it. So let's start a fun little trend. And if you don't get to it this week, you can post on there any of the other weeks. and just keep sharing them, because food memories are extremely important, and it's a really good way for us to stay connected during this time. I look forward to seeing it. And so today we're going to make those banana muffins together. So, and we'll talk about substitutions. If you don't have bananas, that's fine. So let's get started. Okay, I'm ready. How about you? I've washed my hands. Did you wash your hands? I put on my apron and I've got my hair up, so I'm ready to go. And I've also already done the mise en place because I wanted to make sure that I had time to talk about other things instead of wasting the time on measuring, since we talked about that last week, and you guys should be pretty good with that. Okay, so we are going to make our banana muffins. Mine are gluten-free because of my food allergies, but use whatever flour you have at home. So I have measured out, I'm doubling it because I have a lot of bananas that have gotten a little overripe and are ready. So I have the perfect amount to double this recipe. So I'm going to be talking about it in terms of what you're going to be using, but my measurements are going to look bigger because I have doubled it, okay? Just want to make you aware of that. So this is a perfect recipe for overripe bananas. And if you don't have bananas in your house, that's okay. You can substitute any other kind of fruit. So if you have some apples on hand, you can use those up. Maybe you have some blueberries, or maybe you want to do a combination of banana and blueberry. That's always really yummy. The fruit is going to help moisten the muffin too. So you want to make sure that you're using a fruit that's going to help to do that. A lot of times those substitutes can be used in place of some of the oil. So like you'll use an applesauce or banana to replace some of the yummy oils to make a recipe a little bit healthier. We are going to be using bananas. If you have questions about what you can use for substitutions, please message me, let me know in the classroom, and we'll answer all of those questions, okay? You should have pretty much everything else on hand. There'll be one other thing that might be a little different, and we're going to talk about that as well. So we are doing, mine is going to be a gluten-free and vegan version. So I have my flour, and this is the brand that I used. It's my favorite gluten-free substitution. I can use it one for one, just like I would, use regular flour. You can use the same amount for the gluten-free flour. And then I have my gluten-free oats. So this is the brand that I've used, and I find it works really well. All right, so my flour, I'm going to put right in the same bowl with my oats. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. Okay, and now we need to add our salt. So I've already measured our salt. And in baking, the measurements really matter because it's more about chemistry. So whether or not your muffin's going to rise properly and all of that stuff, it's important that you get these measurements correct. All right, so I have my baking powder. Okay, so this recipe calls for both baking powder and baking soda, and those, again, they work together to help your muffins rise. And you don't want to confuse them, because if you reverse them and you use the measurement for the baking powder for the baking soda and vice versa, you're going to end up with a really salty tasting muffin. It's not going to be very good. So I have my baking powder, and then I have my baking soda, which is significantly less than the baking powder measurement. Okay. And I have some cinnamon. I love the cinnamon in this. It really adds a nice flavor. And then a touch of nutmeg. So that's kind of like a secret ingredient. It just adds a little depth to the flavor of the muffin. Okay, mixing that up. Make sure it's blended really well so that when someone bites into the muffin, they're not getting a big chunk of salt or a big big mouthful of cinnamon. You want to make sure that the flavor is dispersed evenly. Once you add this to the wet ingredients, it doesn't mix in quite as well as when it's still dry. So you want to make sure that that's evenly distributed. Okay. Now it's time to go ahead and do our wet ingredients. So I've measured out the coconut oil, but I didn't melt it yet because I wanted you to see what it looks like this. It's firm. If you don't have coconut oil in the house, that's fine. You can use whatever you have. So if you have butter, great, use the butter. If you don't have a dairy allergy, or maybe there's a dairy-free butter that you use, you can have that. Or you can use some sort of oil. I would stay away from olive oil. That has a stronger flavor, but a canola oil or vegetable oil you can use in place of the coconut oil. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and melt that a little bit. All right. And we are going to, oh, I almost forgot. So my recipe calls for flax eggs instead of regular eggs. So if you don't have flax seed, ground flax meal at home, this is what I use. It has to be ground, so it's not the whole seeds anymore. It's all ground up into like a flour. If you don't have that, you can use eggs. So this recipe calls for 2 flax eggs, and that's the same as using 2 regular eggs. Okay, so just go ahead and use eggs if you have them and you're not allergic to them. Okay, our coconut oil is nice and soft. So again, I've doubled this, and I'm going to go ahead and create my flax eggs. So I have my water and I have my ground flaxseed. So we're going to mix those together, and it's good to let them sit for a little bit so that they kind of gel up and make it more of that egg consistency. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit. So flaxseed is also an excellent source of omega-3s. So even if you decide to use eggs in your recipe, but you do have some ground flaxseed at home, I would suggest that maybe you add a little bit into your muffin recipe. It'll just make it so much more nutritious, and you're not going to taste it at all. It actually makes it a lot moister. I know you guys love that word. It's gonna make it soft and delicious. So, all right, we've got our egg going there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my coconut oil into this bigger bowl. So you always want to have your wet ingredients mixed in the larger bowl because you're going to add in your dry ingredients instead of doing it the other way around. All right. And, oh, this is a brand new vanilla. I hadn't pre-measured the vanilla because I wanted to show you a little trick that I like. The vanilla doesn't have to be exact, and I like to use the cap as my measurement. It's just easy because you have it right there on hand, and because I'm doubling it, I'm going to do that twice. All right, so we've got our vanilla, and I never open my vanilla all the way. Another trick that I've used, especially in classes, anyone who's done my class with me, is I'll just use a pin and I'll poke a hole in the top of the protective layer here. I'll show you again. So this, I'll put like a little hole in that. So it makes it easier when you're pouring it. It doesn't all dump out at once because vanilla is very expensive and you don't want to waste it. When you spill it, that's an expensive spill. Okay. So I'm going to blend that up a little bit. I'm going to add my sugar. So sugar goes into the wet ingredients. And my flax egg looks like it's all gelled up, so I'm going to add that now too. Another bonus for using a flax egg instead of a real egg is that there's no danger in doing taste tests while you're baking. So a lot of the reasons why I don't let my chefs in the classroom do taste tests while we're baking is because of the egg ingredients. And I wouldn't want anyone to get sick. But when you're talking about a flax egg, then you don't have to worry about that. So that's an added bonus. All right, so my coconut oil wasn't completely melted, it was just softened. So I want to make sure that I'm blending that in really well and there's no big chunks. No one wants to bite into a big chunk of oil, right? Okay. Looking good. All right, and the next thing we need to do is to mash up our bananas. Okay. So I'm using 6 bananas. It calls for 2 to 3 bananas in the recipe. I like my muffins to be very banana flavored, so I tend to go on the upper end of how many bananas to put in. But if I had only had 4 bananas, because I'm doubling it, if I had only had 4, then that's what I would use, and they would be just fine. Okay, so once I get all of these in here, I'm just going to use a potato masher and mash them up. You can use a fork if you don't have a potato masher. Anything that you can kind of squish them up, and they should be overripe bananas. Those are the best ones to use in this. I wouldn't use a really firm banana. It's not going to taste as good. So a fork would be fine to mash it up because it should be really soft for you. All right, this is a lot of bananas. My bowl is almost completely full. All right, last banana. Already smelling all these bananas is bringing back memories of my grandma. And we used to have a lot of really special times in the kitchen together. Some of my favorite memories. So I highly suggest whenever you get the chance to help out in the kitchen to do it, because those memories are going to stay with you for the rest of your life. And they're very, very special. Those are some of my most treasured memories. And it's something that I got to share with my children. And now with all of you guys. Sometimes I feel like all of you guys are kind of my extended family. Absolutely feel that, actually. So I love seeing all the videos coming in of all the things that you guys are making and sharing with your family. I know this is such a stressful time, and one of the greatest ways that I relieve stress is to go ahead in the kitchen and make something, because there's a lot of things that are out of our control right now, but when we're cooking in the kitchen, we have control over that, and it's a way to have an end product that brings a smile to people's face and helps you to share some of that love that you're feeling for them. Okay, so my bananas are nice and mushy and mashed up. And what we're going to do is we are going to alternate. So we're going to add, so I have my big bowl with my wet ingredients, right? And now I can add a little bit of my dry ingredients. Okay, mix that up. And I'm going to add a little bit of our banana. Mix that up real well. Okay, so this helps us stay in control, making sure that we are adequately blending everything. So again, you don't get any of those big chunks of anything. More banana. This is smelling really good. Okay, so before we started cooking together, I had preheated my oven to 350 degrees. If you haven't done that yet, you're going to want to stop and do that right now so that it's ready for you when you want to put this in the oven, okay? And you should have a pan greased. So I'm using a mini muffin pan. I always choose mini muffins because I feel like I get more that way, and you know, I can have more than just one muffin, and another bonus is they cook much faster. So you get to take them out of the oven in just about half the time that it takes to do the full-size ones. Or you could do a loaf of bread. You could do it banana bread. That one's just going to take a really long time to cook, but that's fine. This recipe is meant to actually be done as a loaf. And if you do decide to do that, then you're going to want to keep it in there for, I would check it at about 40 minutes, and then go from there and determine, it'll probably take close to 50 minutes, depending on the size of your loaf pan. All right, so this is our last add. Got the rest of our flour. Let's add the rest of our bananas. This looks fantastic. All right. And some of you might want to use your stand mixer or hand mixer at home. You can do that. I tend to enjoy, you know, for something like this that's fairly easy to blend, I like to do it by hand. A little bit of extra exercise. Takes a little longer. I can enjoy the process a little. Okay. So this is the mini muffin pan. It's already greased. You can either, to grease it, you can either spray it with some oil, you know, the spray cans, or you can take a paper towel and dip it in, so we used coconut oil, so I would dip it in a little coconut oil and then spread that around, or you can use the paper that's around the butter. If you used up some of the butter, then you can then take that wrapper and use that to coat the pan. Okay, let's go ahead and fill this. We're going to not fill it all the way to the top, but just about, because we want to get it to puff up nicely, okay? But we don't want it to make a huge mess of the pan. And you want to make sure, remember our knife lesson when we were talking about cuts and why it's important to make those even. It's equally as important when you are doing something like this, that each of the little muffin tins are filled the same, okay, or very close to the same. Otherwise, you're going to have some of the muffins that are going to be undercooked and some that are going to be overcooked, and there won't be a lot of consistency to your muffins there. So, I'll keep filling these. And these are going to take about 15 minutes. If you have full-size muffins, it's going to take closer to 20 minutes. And when we put this in the oven, we are going to create a little topping. So it's not a part of the traditional recipe, but it's something that I started doing because I really wanted to add a little bit of my own pizzazz to my grandmother's recipe. And it's become very, very much a part of it. And I know my family always expects it now, so. You can always do a combination too. So like I have a bunch still in this bowl and I'm about to finish filling this pan. So if I wanted to, I mean I have more pans so I can fill more, but if I didn't and I was going to be waiting for this pan to come back out, instead I could do regular size as well. And if I still had some, I could do maybe a mini loaf, or I could just do some of the mini muffins and a loaf. Whatever works for you. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven, and I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, because when that 5-minute timer is up, we're going to take it out and we're going to put the topping on and then put it back in, okay? So let's put it in for 5 minutes. Okay, and let's go ahead and make that topping. I'm going to use the dish that the cinnamon was already in. Wipe my hands off. Okay, I'm going to take, and I don't have exact measurements. I always eyeball this. Those of you who have done my classes know that this is how I cook regularly. I often don't follow a recipe. I just kind of make it up as I go. We have our oats. I'm going to add some sugar. Now you do want it to be sweet, but you don't want to overdo this, right? Because we still want them to be healthy for us. And I'm going to sprinkle some cinnamon on there. I really love cinnamon. Okay. Mix that up. And I really feel like this needs a little more cinnamon added to it, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I don't see cinnamon covering all of the oats, and that's something I want to see. I'm trying to be careful so it doesn't all dump out. It's always easier to add some than it is to take it away. All right, that looks a lot better to me. Okay, so in a couple minutes, we're going to take those banana muffins out, and we're going to sprinkle a little bit of this on the top of each one, okay? So I'll see you in a couple minutes. All right, so our 5 minutes is up. We're gonna go ahead and take those muffins out and add our topping to it. These are coming along very nicely. All right, so I'm just carefully putting a little bit on top of each one. And remember, the sugar is kind of sneaky. It likes to go down onto the bottom, so just keep kind of mixing it up. Get that sugar on there too. presentation really matters when you're cooking. People like to have kind of a sneak peek as to what they're getting. So the oats on the top kind of indicate that there's oats in the recipe. We always eat with our eyes first. And that's important to know as a chef. You want to make sure that your food looks appealing, right? A lot of times, and I'm sure you've done it, we decide before we even taste something whether or not we like it, just by the way it looks, right? Sometimes we're completely wrong because it might be the best thing we've ever tried, but we judged it by how it looked. So it's important to make sure that it looks appealing. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put these back in the oven for about 10 minutes. Okay, so I'll see you back in 10 minutes. Okay, I think they're ready. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, this looks really good. Oh, and I can't tell you how good my kitchen smells right now. If you guys are doing this along with me, I bet your kitchens smell fantastic too. Oh, it's making me so hungry. Okay, so these look great. I'm gonna use a knife to test one. So this one looks a little bit bigger than the rest, so that's the one I'm gonna choose. I'm gonna go right down in the center and see. Yep, see it's like crumbs that comes off. It's not gooey, which means that it's done. So excellent. I'm gonna let it cool a little bit. You don't want to eat it right away because it will absolutely burn your mouth, and then you won't be able to enjoy it. You won't taste anything. And see how nicely they come out because I made sure that I took the time to grease it. If you forget to grease your pan, you're really going to be struggling when you're trying to get it out. So it's always important to make sure that you are fully prepped. Remember, last time we talked about reading a recipe and making sure that you've kind of looked it over first before you start, so you know all of those beginning steps that you need to take to prepare. Like turning on the oven and making sure that's heating up while you're doing the rest of it. That way it takes less time, so you don't have to stop and wait for the oven to heat up. Okay, and you can let it cool in the pan a little bit before you take it out so you're not burning your fingers as you're doing this. It's a little hot, I'll tell you. But it takes longer to cool that way, and I'm kind of excited to try this, so. All right. Okay, so. We've got all of our muffins here cooling off. And I can't wait to try them. Hopefully you are enjoying this as much as I am. Don't forget, send me your pictures and your videos. And if you changed the recipe up at all, share that recipe with us, okay? And you're gonna be talking to a grandparent or an aunt or uncle or a neighbor, someone that you know, and asking them about their food memories, okay? This, even just the smell of it, is bringing me back to my grandmother's kitchen. So ask them about their food memories and ask them for their favorite recipe to go along with that. And try making that at home. And if you can share it with them, great. If you can't, you know, at least you'll be able to practice that recipe, so then when we can see each other face to face again, you can sit down and enjoy that together and make them very happy to enjoy that memory. All right, I'll see you guys all again soon. Bye.